Look, I wish them good luck. Tim Flannery rang me earlier this evening just to let me know that they were continuing on a voluntary basis, and I said, that's the great thing about democracy. It's a free country, and it proves our point that the Commission didn't have to be a taxpayer-funded body. There is perfect freedom for people to continue to do this.
Greg Hunt there. Professor Tim Flannery is in Sydney for the launch later this morning. He joins us now. Professor Flannery, good morning. Greg Hunt there makes a perfectly valid point, doesn't he, about there's really no need for this body of yours to be taxpayer funded?
Look, I think that it helped us to get up and running and to establish our credibility to have that source of funding. But we've got that now. We're well known to the public. They know what we do. So we are going to continue on in a new organisation which will be funded by donation. And
how much have you raised so far? I know it's very early days yet.
Well, we went live at midnight and we had our first donation from James from Perth of $15 at midnight. We've been raising about $1,000 an hour since then, and that's through the night.
$1,000 an hour, so you're up to, what, about $7,000 so far?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
yeah.
And where are you sourcing these donations from? Is it people like James with his spare $15, or corporate interests, benefactors being involved as well?
Look, I haven't had a chance to look at who's donated yet. I'm sorry, I've been busy doing other things. But what I can assure people is that we will not allow our independence to be compromised by anyone on this. We were the same in government. We were absolutely apolitical, and we understand that our independence is central to our credibility. So if people do donate, don't try to influence what we do.
Okay, now why have you felt the need, after the Commission being axed by the government last week, to press ahead with the Commission and the Commission's work?
Look, the overwhelming volume of support from the public was what really made us decide on this, particularly over the last 5 days or so. We have had people from across the political spectrum just saying that, you know, an informed public in this area is absolutely essential, and we want you to continue. We use your reports. We need a clear, credible and authoritative and independent voice in this area, and that there's really never been a more critical time for that voice than now.
How much money effectively would you need to do the work you did, funded by the taxpayer?
Well, look, under the government model, we cost about $5.4 million over a 4-year period. We think we can work leaner than that as a private group, but there's no doubt that there is a big challenge there, gaining the money to make sure that we get out. I mean, we held 27 public forums around the country, published the same number of reports, and developed a website, and all of that does cost money, so there is a challenge there. But we're confident, I must say, with the support that we've had expressed and actually delivered, that we'll be able to achieve that.
Greg Hunt, in that late line interview of which we were playing excerpts this morning, Tim Flannery was saying, from his perspective, that the Bureau of Meteorology is the primary scientific agency, and he also went on to say in that interview that the Climate Commission never did original research, you simply collated research done by agencies like the Bureau.
Look, that's absolutely right. We have simply one goal and one objective, and we always have, which is to take the science, the economics of climate change and what's happening internationally in terms of action, and present it in a clear and understandable way, an authoritative way to the Australian public. Now, the Bureau does a fantastic job with Australian weather and climate, but our remit is much wider than that.
Now, looking at the new government, Greg Hunt says that the coalition is still committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 5% by 2020. Based on what you've seen from the coalition's policies, will they achieve that?
Well, we haven't seen anything much of the policies yet, and could I just say that we stay out of the politics. We stayed out of the politics as a Climate Commission, and we'll stay out of the politics as a Climate Council. You know, we witnessed as we went around Australia the level of disillusionment with politics in Australia, and we don't want to get involved with that. Our role is simply to be responsible to the Australian public and inform them about the true state of things in terms of the science, the economics and what's happening internationally on climate change.
Now, we are expecting that key report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change later this week. What are you expecting from that?
Look, we'll be responding to that when the report comes out. Professors Will Steffen and Leslie Hughes will be leading the charge for us there. It'll take some time to analyse that report and respond faithfully to that. But could I just say that there has been quite a lot of misinformation in the media in recent days on supposedly leaked reports and this sort of stuff. This is a typical attempt by those who wish to mislead us. To come out in advance of the report and misrepresent what it says. You won't find credible climate scientists commenting on that. They'll wait till the report comes out and then report faithfully to the Australian public the true position as the IPCC sees it.
What particular misinformation are you talking about?
Look, you've seen it all over the press suggesting that the IPCC has varied its estimations very greatly from the previous report. We shall see what the actual situation is in just a few days' time.
Would you expect this report to look at the debate about whether global warming has essentially paused, or the level of global warming, since 1998?
Look, we'll be very clear on that when the report comes out. There's quite a lot to be said about that. It is a complex area of science, but we will do our best to make sure the Australian public understand what the scientists are actually saying.
You're obviously an expert in this field. Why do you think that is the case?
Sorry, could you?
Why do you think that is the case? That the level of warming has paused since 1998?
Look, what's happened is that in the atmosphere, the record bounces around quite a lot. The atmosphere is very small compared with the oceans, and 90% of the heat trapped by the atmosphere goes into the oceans. So you vary that rate of heat transfer into the oceans and the atmosphere will bounce around. But if you ask the question, what's the planet, the surface of the planet as a whole doing? You've got to look at the atmosphere, the oceans and the land. But I don't want to preempt what our scientists are going to say to any great extent on this, because we'll wait for the report and then explain very clearly to people what the situation is.
Okay, now just before we go, going back to Greg Hunt's point about the Bureau of Meteorology being the primary scientific agency, based on your knowledge, and you'd have very deep contacts, of course, with a body like the Bureau, have they got the resources, the ability to do the job that the Climate Commission did?
Look, we hold the Bureau in the highest regard. We work with them very closely, but they do one part of what we do, yeah? So they look at Australia, climate and weather, and do a fantastic job with that. We've got a broader remit. We're looking at climate science at the global level. We're looking at economic actions and what are the most appropriate and cost-effective economic actions to address climate change, and also what countries are doing around the world. What's the political landscape looking like? And that's tremendously important, because our target is conditional on international action, and the public need to understand very clearly what countries like the US and China are doing so that we can calibrate our response.
So that's only one part the Bureau does. The Climate Council, I assume, you're hoping to fill these gaps that the Bureau can't cover.
That's right. The Bureau does part of that, and other organisations do other parts. There's advocacy groups that do part of it. But we are not an advocacy group. We're really an educational group. We're there to provide authoritative and clear information so that the public understand what's happening. Without that, we don't have a democracy.